Hi, welcome back to my studio. As you recall, if you've been here before, we have an ongoing discussion about the concepts behind painting. So today, I kind of want to talk about the bear in the room, talent. What is talent? You know, I taught college for several years, and I taught an art appreciation course over a 6 or 7 year period. And there was a kind of a recurring theme that I noticed in my classes. These were kids who weren't art majors. These were kids who were taking their art credits in humanities or in arts and taking an art appreciation. It was an AH 100 class. And basically the recurring thing that came to me was how something about our school system, and I'm not picking on the school system, but it seems to take and diminish our creativity. It's like the competitiveness of school, you know, the grading, A, B, C. There's a competitiveness there, and it's like somehow we get it in our heads, and by the time we reach high school, that we either have talent or we don't. And we're either artistic or we're not. Well, boy, I'm so sad about that because that's so wrong. We all are creative. Every one of us. If you're breathing, you're creative. And I would like to give you that back. And so what creativity and skill, these are two big aspects to making art. And the creativity is innate. It's in all of us. It comes out in many, many ways. It comes out as a gardener. How about somebody who builds street rods? Somebody who builds houses? A cook? A musician? All of these are creative endeavors. We're all creative. Writing. You know, we confuse, I think, skill or talent with genius. Okay, so there were geniuses. These people, you know, they made it seem easier. They were above. But most of us, you know, being an artist is just developing our skill, and it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of thought. That's what these videos are about, giving you the thought behind the painting. You know, not just how to paint, but thinking about it, the thoughts behind it. So with this thought in mind, with creativity and skill, how's it innate? Well, it's part of us. It's that thing, that desire to grow. That's what art is. Art is growth. My paintings are never done. I'm always working on them. This painting's been worked on, I don't know how many times. So the creativity, you own the creativity. It's yours. You know, get back in touch with that. It's there. You just have to be aware of it. The skill, however, is acquired. And it's like becoming a musician. I've played guitar for 50 years. I'm not bad. I don't make a living at it, but I entertain myself. And when I started playing guitar, I was like everybody else. I wasn't very good unless I had the gift. But I acquired the skill to play guitar to the point where I really enjoy playing guitar. Painting's the same way. It's a skill. And so you develop the skill. You develop it through thought and looking at artwork and studying artwork. Drawing is very important. Drawing is the basis of all visual arts. I don't care whether you're an architect or a mechanical engineer. Drawing is the foundation. So, you know, if you want to make your art a little better, draw a lot. You know, study drawing. I love Van Gogh's pen and ink drawings. Look at Van Gogh's stuff. When he didn't start working until he was in his 30s, or his late 20s. And he was horrible. And in just a very short period of him applying himself, he acquired a great skill. His pen and ink drawings that he did after he was doing art for a while are gorgeous. They're beautiful. So you can acquire skill. And so that's what kind of the basis of these videos is about, is helping you to acquire that skill. Feed your creativity and develop your skill. So what things can you do to make that better? Well, understand your media. When I was in grad school, I had to take a course where we did every media available to the painter as a painting major. And so that meant I did stucco, I did frescoes, I did egg tempera, I did acrylic, I did oil, I did watercolor, on and on and on and on. And oil is my media. It's the media that I choose for several reasons. You know, okay, so if I know my media, if I'm going to go out and do plein air, and I'm outside working in the sun and in the wind and all that, and I choose acrylic as my media, all I want to do is fight it. Because it's going to dry on my palette, it's going to dry in my brush, it's going to dry on the canvas before I can even get a stroke. So acrylic is not a good choice. Watercolor, I've tried. It's a little better because you can saturate the paper and it works a little differently. But acrylic's really hard to do outside unless you use retarders and those kinds of things. Oil, on the other hand, is very juicy and, malleable, and it works really well outside. But you can tell I have a bias towards oil. But know your media. So if the media, for example, if you're doing egg tempera, it requires very tight, a lot of control, a lot of preparation, because the stuff dries so quick. That was the media that people used up into the Renaissance when oil was invented. So the media is a very important aspect of your skill. That also includes brushes. Now I've got some brushes here. I'm going to hold my brush bucket up. This is just brushes. I've got buckets of brushes. After you've been painting for as many years as I have, you kind of get a load, and these are, I don't know if I ever use them again. They just hang around the studio. But brushes are your finger extensions. These are, by the way, when Van Gogh was in an insane asylum before he committed suicide, he got to the point where he was eating his paint because he thought he could paint faster if the paint would come out of his fingers. So it doesn't work that way. Good brushes, though, they do. So brushes. This is an angular sash. This is probably one of my favorite brushes. I use this brush a whole lot. And big brushes. The smaller the brush, the tighter you paint. If you want to paint gestural and painterly, use the biggest brush you can stand. That's really good input, you guys. This brush is wonderful because just by my manipulation, I can create lines, big juicy strokes, all kinds of, it's almost like a calligraphic brush. It's really, really good for that kind of strokes, gestural thing. Then you have a few new brushes here, so you can see what they look like when they're new. This is called a Filbert. Filberts are great for making nice gestural strokes again, but on a more controlled size. This is called a long, or if you get this shorter, it's called a bright. And these make a more structured stroke, if you will, clean edges, that kind of thing. Edges in painting are very important, you guys. You don't want to have everything edgy. You don't want everything to look like a paint by number. You want it to have lost edges, diffused edges, and the kind of brush you use actually defines the kind of edge you make. Okay, another thing about brushes, the kind of material. If you're going to paint with a lot of oil and you want to load your brush, loading a brush is important. You need a long brush with lots of bristles that holds paint. You don't want to have to keep going back to the palette to paint. You want to load the brush with your color and make some strokes. So loading the brush, these are bristles. These are synthetic bristles based on a hog hair bristle. You can still get the hog hair. I like the synthetic better. They're a little more controllable for me. But bristles are great with oil. If you want to do really tight, delicate stuff, then you want to lean more towards the sable and things like that. Sables are very expensive. This is a bristle brush, is about $15-20. As a sable, this would be about $100. So price is involved. Don't buy cheap brushes. I've talked about don't buy cheap paint. Don't buy cheap brushes, because this is your ability to make strokes, your ability to communicate the paint on the canvas. So good brushes, and you got to take care of them. The secret I have of taking care of the brushes is after you're done painting and you clean your brush out with your turpentine or your thinner, I put a little goop on them and work it in, and the lanolin in the goop keeps the brushes pliable and soft. So this works really well. So now we've talked about basically the brushes just a little bit, and the medium, the next thing we need to talk about. The medium is the vehicle. If you're working in oil, the medium is some kind of oil-based liquid. If you're working in watercolor, it's water. If you're working in acrylic, it's water maybe with some kind of a polymer in it. But the medium is what we call a vehicle in painting. The vehicle means it gets the paint from the palette to the surface, to your support, to your canvas. And it's super important. I was so dumb about art. I had such a horrible high school art teacher. When I was trying to paint, I was putting tubes of oil paint right out of the tube onto my palette, picking it up with my brush and brushing it on an unprepared canvas, and couldn't figure out why I couldn't paint. Try that. It's horrible. It's horrible. You need a medium to thin the paint to make it brushable, to make it workable. There are all kinds of mediums. I mean, I can't even go into it here. The mediums go on and on and on. The Ralph Mayer Handbook I mentioned earlier video is a great book. It's full of the mediums. I personally use Gamblin, which is a great American company. They're up in Washington State. This is an alkyd medium, which means that it dries pretty quick and it's pretty stable. And I like the light, which means the viscosity it's not quite as thixotropic. I love that word. Look that one up. It's not quite as thixotropic as the Galkyd straight. The Galkyd light's a little thinner, more brushable for me. But I like this because it gives a nice brushability to the paint, but it also dries pretty quick. Oil has a problem. I used to have 5, 6, 7, 8 paintings going at once, just so I could work on a painting that was dry enough to work back into. Now with the alkyds, the painting dries overnight and I can come back into it the next morning in the studio and it's ready to work on. So this is an aspect of, this helps my skill. All of these things make you more skillful. So these are the things that make you a better painter. Okay, so you need a turpentine to thin your paint with sometimes. Don't buy cheap turpentine. Buy good turpentine. Buy a pure one that is made for oil painting. If the smell bothers you, you can buy low odor ones. Turpenoid is great to clean the brushes, but this is not a medium. This shouldn't be used as your vehicle. A lot of people use this as their vehicle, but it's really not as good. It doesn't emulsify the paint the way this does. This is really important, you guys. These things really affect the way you paint. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about I guess I got a couple things left. I want to talk about paint briefly on things. Again, we've talked about paint a lot, but this is a big deal. Understanding paint. If you're going to work on oil, buy good paint. Don't buy cheap stuff. Buy paint. You have series 1 through 5. For example, this tube of paint is Sevres Blue, which is based on English China, the color is. And it's a series 1 or 2, which a 1 is cheaper than a 5. Okay, so this small tube probably cost about 15, 20 bucks. This is Cobalt Blue. It's a series 5. Now, this is about as expensive as you can get on paint. This little tube is probably about 70 bucks now. I haven't bought one for a long time. I don't use this anymore. I've gone to another blue. But anyway, the series is a big deal on your price. You also have a light fastness scale on here that tells you how permanent the paint is. And it goes from 1 to 3 or 4. Also, you can contact your supplier and usually get a color chart that for free that gives you all of the properties about the paint that you want. So all of these things are tools for the studio. So we've talked about paint and brushes briefly. The last thing is the support. It's a support. That's the thing you paint on, the support for your painting. This is linen. I like to paint on linen. Linen on stretcher bars. Linen requires pretty heavy stretcher bars because of the tension it requires to get it taut. And why linen? Linen in the art world is the Cadillac of canvases to paint on. It's much better than cotton duck canvas, but it's more expensive. But it's a better surface. Lots of reasons. It lasts longer. We're talking hundreds of years as opposed to canvas lasts maybe 100 years. But anyway, linen with good oil base, your support makes a difference the way the paint lays up. I like to paint on panels. Now, don't buy those cardboard panels. Quit buying those. If you do a masterpiece on a cardboard panel, you're going to be really upset because the damn things warp and they're cardboard. They degrade. They're horrible, and you don't save that much money. I did a hotel commission in Vail where I did 100 paintings, and I did them on these panels. And these are made in Italy. You get them from the Jerry's we talked about before. And these are a great panel. They're not too awful expensive. I think this panel's about $3 or $4. But it's going to last a long time. It's going to stay very, very straight. It's not going to warp. And it's a good surface to paint on. All of these things add to your skill level, and the skill level helps increase your creativity. So these are the things, you guys, behind painting. These are the thoughts and the concepts. If you have any questions, or you want to talk to me about this stuff, or you want to go a little deeper about it, contact my studio at Michael Galt Studio, and we'll talk about art. Take care of yourself. God bless.